A damp dawn breaks over the harbor. In the eerie stillness, a wooden gallows looms against a gray sky. Seabirds circle and cry as if mourning. Below, salt-tinged fog clings to the empty execution yard, where many a pirate met their fate. But this morning, chained in a cold cell nearby, a woman waits. She draws a shaky breath, heart pounding with quiet dread. This is the final shore every pirate dreads: captivity, judgment, the specter of death. For a man, the noose is almost certain. But for a female pirate, what comes after capture is a fate wrapped in mystery, sometimes mercy and often unspeakable sorrow. In that stillness before history's storm, we glimpse her silhouette through the iron bars. She is worn from battles and betrayals, yet in her eyes burns a defiant courage. As light creeps in, she shuts her eyes and remembers the freedom of salt spray and open horizons. This calm moment is heavy with dramatic irony. The world believes women like her are weak, yet here she stands unbowed, awaiting a punishment even the strongest might fear. In the silence, she whispers a name, perhaps a fallen comrade or a child left behind. Her fingers trace a crude tattoo of a sparrow on her wrist, a token of hope. Outside, the footfalls of soldiers approach to collect their prisoner. The stillness shatters. The storm of her story is about to erupt, carrying us across oceans and centuries. From the Caribbean to the South China Sea, from colonial courts to the Queen of England's throne room, we will witness what truly happened to female pirates after capture. Tales so astounding and heartfelt, they will leave you speechless. Caribbean Sea, 1720. A lantern light flickers on the deck of the sloop William. The tropical night is thick with humidity and the smell of gunpowder and rum. And Bonnie's hand rests on her cutlass as she scans the darkness. Mary Read stands at her shoulder, both disguised in men's loose shirts and trousers. Below deck, most of Calico Jack Rackham's crew lie in a drunken stupor, unaware of the danger closing in. Suddenly, a shout rings out. The silhouette of a prowling ship appears, lit by the pale glow of dawn. It's Captain Barnett's sloop, a pirate hunter's vessel sent by Governor Woodes Rogers. Anne's heart seizes, there's no time to flee. With a boom of a cannon, chaos erupts. The William shudders under fire. Anne and Mary spring into action, courage igniting in their veins. Mary Red fires a pistol, the shot cracking the dawn. And Bonnie roars to the men stumbling up from below, "On deck, you cowards!" But many pirates, groggy and terrified, slink back into the hold. Only these two women and a few loyal hands stand to fight. Steel clashes as Barnett's men board. Mary duels a sailor twice her size, her blade flashing with lethal grace, and grabs the fallen pirate flag and brandishes it like a rallying standard under the pale sky. For a brief moment, these fierce women hold the deck, defying all expectations in a storm of splintering wood and gun smoke. But they cannot fight alone. A sailor's club strikes Anne's sword from her hand. Mary is surrounded, a cut grazes her arm. Still she lunges forward until three men wrestle her down. Betrayal bites as Anne sees one of their own lead Barnett's crew to the hiding pirates. Shackles clamp around Anne's wrists. The fight is over. Captured, and Bonnie and Mary Red are dragged across the blood-stained deck, the rising sun finding them on their knees in chains. The sky is streaked with pink and gold, a cruelly beautiful dawn for the end of their freedom. The courage they showed is little comfort now as they're thrown into the ship's dark hold, sailing toward imprisonment and an uncertain fate. Heavy iron doors slam shut. In the Jamaican jail, a thick silence hangs, broken only by distant waves. Anne and Mary share a damp stone cell, hands raw from the ropes that bound them. By a narrow window, a sliver of moonlight falls on their faces. Jack Rackham has been taken elsewhere with the male crew. Through the bars, and Bonnie watches torches bobbing outside, preparations for the dawn executions. She knows Jack's time is nearly up. Footsteps echo in the corridor. Two guards drag Jack Rackham in chains to stand before Anne's cell. The once dashing pirate captain is ashen, fear flickering in his eyes. For a heartbeat, husband and wife lock gazes in anguished silence. Jack forces a grin trying to be brave, and steps forward, fingers curled around the cold bars. The candlelight reveals tears Jack cannot hide. He opens his mouth as if to apologize, to beg forgiveness for failing them in battle, for being too drunk to fight. Anne's heart twists. She remembers how he once charmed her in Nassau, a roguish grin promising adventure. Now all that remains is a condemned man, about to swing from the gallows. Anger rises in and like bile. She recalls the betrayal of that night, Jack cowering below decks while she and Mary stood bloodied and defiant. Her voice cracks the silence, low and fierce. "If you'd fought like a man, Jack, you wouldn't be about to hang like a dog." Jack's eyes widen at her bitter words, and a solitary tear rolls down his cheek. He nods faintly, accepting her judgment, shame heavy on his shoulders. A guard curses and shoves him along, and watches, trembling, as Jack Rackham is led away to his death in the pre-dawn dark. Mary Read gently places a hand on Anne's shoulder. They press their foreheads together through the bars, sharing in quiet sorrow as outside a muffled drumroll begins. When the sun rises, Calico Jack's body hangs suspended in the morning light, an eerie warning to all pirates. In the cell's heavy silence and blinks back tears. Whatever love or loyalty she had felt is eclipsed by anger and grief. Now she and Mary await their own reckoning. Late November 1720, the courthouse at St. Iago de la Vega swelters with an uneasy crowd. Word has spread like wildfire. 2 female pirates are to stand trial today. Shackled at the wrists, and Bonnie and Mary Read are marched into the oak-paneled chamber. Dozens of eyes, magistrates in white wigs, planters' wives fanning themselves, sailors craning to see, fix upon them. And lifts her chin, masking fear with defiance. Mary's jaw is set firm. In their tattered men's breeches and loose shirts, the 2 cut scandalous, unforgettable figures. The prosecutor drones, listing their crimes on the high seas: theft, piracy, firing guns at His Majesty's ships. Each charge lands heavily in the hush. Mary's heart hammers. She recalls each desperate act of courage that now condemns them. A witness is brought forth. A trembling woman named Dorothy Thomas points at the accused and recounts how these pirate women attacked her boat without mercy. Murmurs ripple through the crowd, some in awe of such ferocity from women, others in horror. And meets Dorothy's gaze unflinching until the witness falters and looks away. The judges confer in low voices. Finally, the chief judge's words boom: "Guilty." The verdict is no surprise, yet it drives the air from their lungs. Death by hanging is the sentence for piracy. Anne and Mary exchange a quick, desperate look. They expected this, planned for this. As the bailiffs move to drag them away, Mary finds her voice. "Me lord," she cries out. "We plead our bellies," and stands beside her, hand protectively on her abdomen. A shocked gasp rises in the court. The judge's eyes narrow. Could it be a lie? 2 women now confessing they are pregnant, begging the court's mercy to spare the innocent lives they carry. Anxious whispers surge. Pirate or not, English law forbids executing a woman with child. Skepticism and scorn cross the magistrates' faces, but procedure must be followed. By candlelight that evening, a gray-haired doctor examines Anne and Mary in a private chamber. The men of the court wait outside, fidgeting as minutes crawl by. At last the physician emerges, dabbing sweat from his brow, and nods solemnly. Both prisoners are with child. The relief that floods Anne's face is tempered by dread of the unknown. The judge grudgingly postpones their deaths until after childbirth. Shackles remain on their wrists, but hope, however faint, flickers in their hearts. As the gavel falls, Mary allows herself one small sigh of relief. The 2 women are escorted back to prison, alive for now, while the gallery buzzes with disbelief. In the span of a day, they have transformed from hellcat pirates to vulnerable mothers, their fate suspended by a tenuous new thread of life. Weeks bleed into months in the dank Jamaican prison. The wet season rains have come, turning the prison yard to mud and sending rats scurrying along the stone corridors at night. Inside their dim cell, Anne watches over Mary, who lies shivering on a straw pallet. Mary Read's fiery spirit is fading like a candle guttering out. She's burning with fever, her once bright eyes now glassy. "Typhus," the jailer mutters. Mary's pregnancy has been fraught, her cheeks grow hollow. And presses a cool rag to Mary's brow, fighting tears as her only friend wanes. On a stifling April midnight, Mary's breathing turns ragged. Memories dance in her fevered mind. She whispers disjointed fragments of her past to Anne. Childhood in England as a fatherless girl disguised as a boy, riding on her mother's knee learning to fence with a wooden sword. She speaks of the battlefields of Flanders where she first knew the thunder of cannons, of the brief happiness she found with a soldier husband, now long in the grave, and squeezes Mary's hand, listening to the dying woman's last confessions in a soft, broken voice. Mary's face glistens with sweat and tears. "We almost had freedom," she rasps, a tear sliding down her temple. "Better to have lived free on the high seas for a while, than never at all." Anne's throat tightens. She cannot disagree. As the first light of April 28, 1721 dawns, Mary Read grows still. Her child will never be born. And realizes with a stabbing pain that her dearest companion is gone, stolen not by the hangman but by an unseen killer in the dark. They drag Mary's lifeless body from the cell that morning, and reaches out through the bars, a sob catching in her chest as Mary is taken away wrapped in rough canvas. No prayers, no marked grave, just a burial at dusk outside the town walls. And crumples to her knees on the stone floor, quiet sorrow finally breaking free in racking sobs. In the emptiness that follows and is left utterly alone, a pregnant woman shackled in the dark, grieving and fearful. The same walls that witnessed Mary's last breath now echo Anne's whispered promise. I will live for both of us. Each day Anne wills herself to endure, even as despair claws at her. She presses a hand to her swelling belly, drawing a sliver of comfort from the faint kicks within. For the sake of the life inside her and the memory of Mary's indomitable spirit, Anne refuses to let the darkness consume her. One sweltering afternoon, months after Mary's passing, the jangle of keys interrupts Anne's reverie. A British officer, flanked by 2 guards, stands at the cell door. Anne, gaunt and pale, rises to her feet, heart pounding. The officer's face is unreadable as he breaks the silence. And Bonnie, you are to be released. Anne's shackles fall open with a heavy clang. She can hardly believe it. After so long in chains, the sudden absence of weight on her wrists feels unreal. Freedom? She staggers forward, clutching her rounded belly. The officer offers a curt explanation. Certain influential parties have petitioned on your behalf, and doesn't know if it's the ghost of her estranged father pulling strings, or someone else who intervened quietly. She only knows that she will not hang under the hard gaze of redcoats, and steps out of the prison gates into blinding sunlight. The warm air and scent of sea salt hit her like a wave. She raises a hand to shield her eyes and in that moment feels the sun on her skin as if for the first time. With a mix of joy and grief, she remembers Mary's face turned toward the dawn on their ship's deck. Dramatic irony twists her heart. She is free, but Mary lies in the cold ground beyond all cages. A wagon waits to take into the port. You'll be put on a ship out of Jamaica by sundown, the officer states flatly. It's not a request. And nods. Exile is a small price for life. That evening, cloaked in a borrowed dress and a new identity, Anne finds herself on a merchant vessel bound for the Carolinas. As the ship creaks away from Port Royal, she stands at the stern. The island recedes, along with the bloody chapter of her pirate life. In her hand she clutches a small pouch of keepsakes, one of Mary's pistols and a lock of her hair, taken before the burial. Tears slip down Anne's cheeks for Mary, for Jack, for all the wild days lost. But within her also stirs a fierce resolve. She will start anew as fate has strangely allowed. She pictures an ordinary cottage, children at play, and herself telling bedtime tales of a pirate life to wide-eyed little ones. The notion feels both bittersweet and miraculous. Under the fading orange sky, and Bonnie whispers a goodbye to her old self. The sea breeze carries her words away. She has survived what should have been certain death, carrying forward the legacy of those who did not. Unseen by Anne, the sun dips below the horizon, setting on the golden age of piracy she once knew, and rising on the unknown years ahead. South China Sea, 1809, a blood-red sun sinks toward the horizon as dozens of pirate junks glide through the waves, sails emblazoned with fierce emblems. At the prow of the largest ship stands Qing Shi, known also as Zheng Yi Sa, the widow of Zheng Yi. Dressed in a flowing crimson jacket, she surveys her flotilla with hawk-like focus. The air smells of salt and gunpowder. The embers of a recent battle smolder on a nearby captured frigate. At Qing Shi's side stands Chang Pao, her trusted second-in-command and husband, eyes scanning the sea for new threats. 4 years, this formidable woman has commanded the largest pirate fleet in history, thousands of men under her iron rule. Victory after victory has made her a living legend, a pirate queen who bows to no emperor. Yet on this evening, as the waves slap against the hull, an unease hangs over the crew. Far on the horizon, Imperial Qing naval ships gather, bolstered by Western Allies' cannons. Qing Shi's enemies are closing in, determined to crush her once and for all. Below deck, whispers of doubt spread among some pirate captains. Betrayal brews like a storm cloud. Qing Shi knows a few of her lieutenants secretly consider surrendering to save themselves. She has seen one of her own, the Captain Opate, defect and accept amnesty earlier in the year, a sting she has not forgotten. Now, with the sea stained golden by the dying sun, she calls a council on deck. Lanterns flicker as hardened pirates gather before her. The quiet that falls is absolute. Even the waves seem to hush. Qing Shi's sharp eyes sweep over them. In a voice calm but steely, she lays out their grim reality. They are outnumbered and outgunned. The government blockade at the Pearl River mouth tightens by the day. Murmurs of fear ripple, but she raises a hand for silence. Courage and cunning have seen them through countless fights, yet this time brute force may not prevail. She speaks of a different path: negotiation. A few men spit at the idea, others exchange surprised glances. Surrender feels like defeat. But Qing Shi's mind is made up. Better to bargain from a position of strength now than to be hunted down to extinction. She would sooner bend slightly than be broken. As the pirates disperse to their ships, some grumble that their leader has lost her nerve. Others, fiercely loyal, trust her vision. Alone at the railing, Qing Shi gazes at the encroaching twilight. The wind tugs at a loose strand of her hair. If her plan fails, the morrow could bring slaughter. But if it succeeds, it will secure something more precious than gold: survival and freedom on her own terms. Canton, 1810. Beneath the imposing walls of the Governor-General's residence, Qing Shi steps out of a small boat and onto solid ground. She has come not as a prisoner but under a flag of truce, with the confidence of a woman who knows her worth. At her back follow a delegation of pirate wives and children, an innocuous entourage chosen to soften the meeting's tone. Still hidden under her elegant silk jacket, Qing Shi carries the weight of her entire fleet's fate. Dramatic irony colors the scene. This notorious pirate queen arrives carrying a toddler son on her hip, as if to an afternoon visit, even as the halls bristle with armed guards who once vowed to kill her. Inside a grand chamber, Governor-General Bai Ling awaits, flanked by Qing officials in dark robes. The atmosphere crackles with tension. The pirates' arrival is met with hawkish stares. A few officers visibly bristle, hands on sword hilts. They expected a fearsome rogue. Instead they see a composed, dignified woman with a child in her arms. As Qing Shi strides forward, she does something bold. She refuses to kneel. Gasps echo off marble walls. For a heartbeat, it seems violence might erupt. But Governor Bai Ling, intrigued and cautious, signals restraint. Negotiations commence. Hours pass as they parley over tea. Qing Shi's voice is measured and firm. She presents her terms: an amnesty for all her pirates, the right to keep their plunder, and official positions for her loyal captains in the Imperial Navy. In return, the pirate queen offers peace. She will disband the roaming menace that has vexed the emperor's waters for years. It is an audacious bargain, and the governor's advisors blanch at the thought of rewarding pirates. Yet Qing Shi speaks not from a position of defeat, but of power. Everyone in the room knows the Navy has failed to vanquish her fleet time and again. Her enemies cannot subdue her by force, and that truth hangs unspoken in the air. At last, a delicate agreement is reached. The authorities grant nearly all her demands with one symbolic stipulation: her pirates must kneel in homage to the emperor's portrait as a gesture of loyalty. Qing Shi inclines her head, the gesture of a reasonable compromise. In her heart, relief wars with lingering pride. Some might call it surrender, but she knows it is a triumph of wit over death. As quills scratch across parchment to formalize the pardon, Qing Shi allows herself a small breath. This is the closest she's ever sailed to the wind of betraying her own code, and she prays her men will understand. She has saved them from the noose at the cost of a bow. When she leaves the mansion's gates, the sun is high and hot. Qing Shi shields her child's eyes and looks up, squinting, to the clear blue sky. For the first time in years, no bounty looms on her head. She has walked into the dragon's den and emerged carrying the prize of peace. The pirate camp erupts in celebration at the news, cautious at first, then jubilant as rum flows. Word spreads that Qing Shi has secured a general pardon for all. On a sandy cove hidden by bamboo groves, hundreds of hardened pirates cheer, embrace, and even weep openly. These fearsome men who once lived by the sword, now envision futures without the shadow of the gallows. Qing Shi stands before them on a rise, Chang Pao at her side, both of them haloed by torchlight. She holds her head high, though her dark eyes shimmer with emotion as she scans the crowd of faces, scarred, sunburnt, unbelieving faces of those she led through war. Legacy wasn't on their minds when they pursued fortune at sea, but tonight they sense they're part of something historic. A grizzled quartermaster steps forward and falls to his knees before Qing Shi, tears cutting through the dirt on his cheeks. One by one, more pirates kneel, not to an emperor but to her, their leader who dared to outweed an empire for them. Moved, Qing Shi bids them rise. The scene is quietly emotional. No boisterous shouts now, only the crackle of fire and the gentle break of waves on the shore. Under the starry sky, she thanks them for their loyalty and service. Some men look away, ashamed they ever doubted her. Chang Pao lifts a ceremonial cup and toasts their leader. Voices echo in a hearty cheer. By imperial decree, Qing Shi's fleet sails to the mouth of the Pearl River the next morning to surrender arms formally. The sun glints on a flotilla of hundreds of junks moving in procession, flags fluttering in a final show of unity. From the battlements, Qing officers watch this awe-inspiring display of pirate power yielding peacefully, a scenario they never imagined. On deck, Qing Shi supervises as crates of weapons and cannons are offloaded. She maintains poise, but inside her heart thrums with mixed feelings. These ships were her kingdom. Disarming them is like laying down a piece of her soul. Still, she steels herself with the knowledge that fortune favors the cunning. By choosing this path, she has won a life for herself and her men that few pirates ever attain. Once the last musket is relinquished, officials stamp documents and wave the pirates ashore. No one is shackled, no one flogged. Feels almost surreal. Qing Shi descends the gangplank with deliberate grace. Her pirate career ends not with a noose or a bullet, but with a dignified step onto land as a free woman. She catches Chang Pao's eye. He smiles in quiet triumph. They have weathered every storm and found harbor at last. In this unexpected peace, Qing Shi's legacy is sealed. She conquered more than ships and silver. She conquered fate itself, carving an escape route where none existed. Years later, the bustling streets of Guangzhou hardly take notice of the middle-aged woman who runs the bustling tavern near the docks. The scent of spiced fish and tobacco smoke fills the air as gamblers cheer over thrown dice. In a corner of the tavern, Madame Qing, as locals know her, quietly sips her tea. Few remember that this respectable matron was once Qing Shi, the terror of the South China Sea. The Qing pardon allowed her a tranquil life, and she embraced it fully. Prosperity followed her. Her gambling house thrives and her children, dressed in fine silk, dart past with laughter. It is a far cry from the roar of cannons and the rocking decks of her youth. On an autumn evening, Madame Qing steps outside as twilight deepens, craving a breath of sea air. The Pearl River flows golden in the sunset. She leans on her cane, a token of age creeping into her bones, and gazes at the waters that once were her battlefield. In the sky, clouds drift like ghostly sails. Quiet sorrow visits her heart unexpectedly. She recalls the exhilarating freedom of commanding the waves, the wind whipping her face as her fleet cut through storms. Those days are gone, and though she chose this peace, a piece of her will forever yearn for the salt spray and endless horizon. A young sailor from a docked ship strolls by, humming a sea shanty. Madame Qing smiles politely, but he doesn't recognize her. Why would he? To him, she's just an aging widow enjoying the dusk. Dramatic irony lingers. The greatest pirate he could ever meet stands before him and he'll never know. Her legend has already begun to drift into rumor and fable, as intangible as the evening mist. She chuckles softly, imagining his face if he knew that the hand resting on this cane once ruled 40,000 pirates and humbled an empire. As stars prick the sky, one of her little grandchildren toddles to her side, tugging her sleeve. Madame Qing lifts the child into her arms, pressing a kiss to his hair. She carries him back inside where lamplight and laughter beckon. The past is the past, glorious, brutal, hers. She survived when so many did not, navigating a man's world with wits sharper than any cutlass. Now, as twilight deepens, she finds solace in the simple riches of peace, family, fortune, and the hard-earned right to grow old. The pirate queen gently closes the tavern door behind her, leaving the night to carry her secret out to sea. Ireland, 1586. A damp chill permeates the stone walls of Dublin Castle's dungeon. Lady Grace O'Malley, feisty Irish pirate chieftain, paces her cell despite iron chains clamped around her ankles. At 56, her fiery red hair streaked with gray, she has the aura of a woman long used to commanding others. But now, captured by the English governor Richard Bingham's men, she faces the humiliation of captivity. Over a year ago, her beloved eldest son was murdered by Bingham's brother, igniting Grace's rebellion. She remembers the fury that drove her to harry English ships along the coast in retaliation. Now that same Bingham has her locked away. She nearly smiles at the irony. They call her a pirate, but it was the English who broke every promise and forced her hand. Tonight, distant torches cast flickering light into her cell. Through the slit of a window high above, Grace can just discern the silhouette of a gallows in the courtyard. Bingham had it built deliberately within her view, a cruel taunt of her impending fate. Grace stands on tiptoe to peer at it. So this is how it ends? She wonders, her heart heavy yet unyielding. She thinks of her clan in Connaught, leaderless if she dies, her younger children left motherless. Yet she refuses to crumble. If she must meet death, she'll do so with the dignity of an O'Malley chieftain. she recalls an old saying in Irish, "A woman's courage is in her soul." Hers remains unbroken. Before dawn, a clamoring arises beyond the cell. The door bursts open with a rusty shriek. An English guard announces gruffly that she is to be released. Grace's eyes widen, uncomprehending. She learns that Irish chieftains, shocked by her capture, have banded together and offered hostages to secure her freedom. In that moment, Grace feels a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief to escape the hangman's noose, sorrow that others had to risk themselves for her. Bingham himself appears, his cold gaze meeting hers as guards unfasten her chains. "You've wriggled free this time, Grace," he spits, frustrated of his prize. Grace lifts her chin and replies evenly, "I'll not forget your gallows, Governor." There is steel in her voice, it's a promise and a warning. Soon Grace steps out, rubbing her raw wrists, breathing deeply the free air. Bingham has seized her lands and livestock. She owns little now but her determination. Banished from her own castle, she returns to the sea. A battered galley becomes her home. As waves crash against its hull, Grace contemplates her next move. She's alive, free by a twist of fortune, but far from safe. Her sons still fight English incursions. The Tudor conquest tightens like a noose around Ireland, and time is not on her side. In the salty breeze, Grace O'Malley closes her eyes and silently vows, she will do whatever it takes to protect her family and her people, even if it means swallowing her pride and seeking help from the most powerful woman in the world. Greenwich Palace, England, 1593. Sunlight pours through mullioned windows onto polished marble floors. In the royal hall, Queen Elizabeth I sits upon a gilded chair, regal and imperious in her silks and jewels. Before her stands Grace O'Malley, travel-worn and proud in a plain Irish dress. The assembly of courtiers lines the walls, watching this meeting of two extraordinary women with bated breath. Grace has sailed through storms and foreign shores to be here, determined to petition the Queen for the lives of her family. Her youngest son, Tibbet, languishes in English custody under false charges of treason. Only Elizabeth's mercy can save him now. Grace O'Malley does the unthinkable, she refuses to bow deeply. She offers only a polite nod of the head, meeting Elizabeth's gaze directly. A ripple of shock goes through the court, such insolence. But Elizabeth, decades on the throne, appraises Grace with curiosity rather than outrage. The Queen's eyes narrow and then, intriguingly, she gestures for all others to leave them. One by one, the courtiers withdraw, leaving the two women nearly alone in the echoing chamber, two guards at a respectful distance. What transpires is a conversation unlike any in the Chronicles of Kings. Grace speaks in halting but clear English, her voice reverberating with emotion. She describes how Governor Bingham's cruelty drove her to rebellion and how, in her twilight years, she seeks peace for her clan. She pledges that if her son is freed and her rights restored, she will devote her remaining days to safeguarding her people and even lend her ships to defend England's coast against Spain. Elizabeth listens intently. Perhaps she sees a reflection of herself in Grace, the resolve, the intelligence needed to lead in a man's world. The two women could not be more different in station, yet in this moment they regard each other as equals across the polished expanse of floor. At one point, the Queen poses a probing question. "Madame O'Malley, why did you not simply submit to our rule and live quietly?" Grace's response is soft but unwavering. "Had I yielded, Your Majesty, I would be merely a ghost of myself. I was born to the sea, to freedom. I ask not for pardon for piracy, but justice for my kin." A silence falls. Then Elizabeth does something astonishing, she smiles. A genuine, small smile. In Grace O'Malley she recognizes a kindred spirit of governance and courage. Against the advice of her own counselors, Elizabeth grants the Irishwoman's requests. She signs orders for Tibbet's immediate release and restoration of some of Grace's confiscated lands. Moreover, the Queen pointedly commands Governor Bingham to cease all trouble for Grace's family. It is a subtle rebuke to her overzealous officer. Grace O'Malley releases a breath she didn't know she was holding. Emotions threaten to well up, but she reins them in. Instead, she reaches into the pocket of her gown and, in a bold personal gesture, presents Elizabeth with a finely crafted dagger, one of the last treasures from her own halls. Gasps echo as she offers it hilt first. "A token of respect from one queen to another," Grace says. Elizabeth's eyebrows arch, then she accepts the blade, admiring its craftsmanship. In that exchange, any last tension melts. The two women have forged an unlikely bond, sealed by mutual respect. When Grace departs Greenwich Palace, escorted with honor, she carries with her not just hope for her son's life, but a deep sense of triumph. She, an old pirate chief, stood before the Virgin Queen and prevailed. A mild wind fills the sails of Grace O'Malley's galley as it glides back toward the green hills of Western Ireland. On deck, Grace stands at the bow, letting the spray of the sea kiss her face. Clutched in her hand is a parchment bearing the Queen's royal seal, the pardon for her son and the restoration of her lands. The journey home feels lighter, as if the very ocean knows of her victory and now bears her gently. Relief floods her heart when she sights the familiar crags of Clew Bay. This is her territory, dotted with islands and inlets that hide her people. For a moment, Grace imagines she hears the cheers already echoing from shore. As the ship docks, her sons and clansmen rush to greet her. Grace's youngest, Tibbet, newly freed from the English prison, is thin but alive. The moment Grace sees him step onto the pier, she breaks protocol and runs to him, arms outstretched. Mother and son embrace tightly, eyes wet with tears of joy. Around them, the clan's warriors and even hardened sailors cheer and wipe their eyes at the sight. Grace O'Malley, who had stared down death and defied an empire, now simply holds her child, whispering a prayer of thanks. In the ensuing days, Grace works swiftly to rebuild. Bingham, chastened by the Queen's reprimand, releases her cattle and ceases hostilities for now. Grace moves like a gale through her affairs, organizing her sons, rallying her remaining allies, and reassuring her people that their mistress of the seas is still at the helm. But late at night, when the fires burn low in Rockfleet Castle, one of the fortresses returned to her, Grace allows herself to feel the weight of years. She is nearly 63. Her life has been one of constant motion and strife. Now, for the first time, she contemplates an enduring peace. Under a sky thick with stars, Grace slips out to a cliff overlooking the dark sea. The waves below churn endlessly, as they have through every triumph and tragedy of her life. She recalls a much younger Grace, setting sail against her father's wishes, determined to command her own ship. That headstrong girl could never imagine bowing to anyone. Yet in London, Grace bowed to none but achieved everything she sought. Dramatic irony isn't lost on her. A pirate who raided English ships found salvation in the English Queen's mercy. She lets out a soft laugh that turns into a sigh. The wind carries faint music from her camp, her people singing an old Irish tune of homecoming. Grace's sharp eyes catch the glow of their fires across the bay, a warm promise of belonging. Though the Tudor conquest still looms, Grace O'Malley has ensured her family's survival and secured a legacy for her children. History may forget or distort her tale, she knows, a most notorious woman the records call her. But the living memory in these hills will sing of Granuaile, the pirate queen, for generations. Wrapping her cloak tighter against the breeze, Grace allows herself one last indulgence. She raises her arms toward the endless ocean and inhales the brine, as if to embrace her lifelong companion. The sea's answer is a whispering crash of waves below, an eternal salute. With that, Grace O'Malley turns and walks steadily back to the welcoming lights of home. Boston, 1789. A dense morning fog clings to Boston Common, muffling the murmurs of a restless crowd. On a wooden scaffold, 3 nooses sway gently in the breeze. Among the condemned stands Rachel Wall, just 29 years old, the only woman in Massachusetts ever sentenced to hang for piracy and robbery. Her hands are bound in front of her simple dress. Her eyes scan the sea of faces below. Thousands have gathered in the pale light to witness her end. Some stare in pity at the slight young woman. Others jeer, seeing only a criminal. Rachel's heart thuds in her chest like a drum, but her face is eerily calm. She has spent the night in prayer and reflection, and now a quiet resignation steadies her. As a minister drones the customary last rites beside her, Rachel's mind drifts to the path that led her here. She recalls herself as a 16-year-old fisherman's daughter, headstrong and hopeful, running away from home to chase love and adventure. She sees the face of George Wall, the charming seaman who became her husband and lured her into a life of piracy. They were an unlikely pair of buccaneers off New England's coast. Rachel would stand on a wrecked ship's deck feigning distress to lure unsuspecting rescuers, only for George and his crew to ambush and rob them. 12 ships fell prey to their ruse, 24 sailors lost their lives to George's blade and the sea. Rachel squeezes her eyes shut at the memory of storms and screams, the deck slick with seawater and worse. George is long gone now, claimed by a shipwreck that she alone survived. Was it betrayal or fate that left her clinging to flotsam in the waves that night? Perhaps both. A seagull cries overhead, jolting Rachel back to the present. The sheriff asks if she has any last words. She nods, stepping forward as far as her ropes allow. The crowd falls unexpectedly silent to hear the notorious pirate Rachel speak. Her voice is soft but carries in the still air, "I forgive all who have harmed me, and I hope to be forgiven for the wrongs I've done." She takes a shuddering breath. In her final moments, Rachel refuses to die a villain in her own mind. "Hear me," she continues, "I warn those, especially the youth, against the evils of bad company and vice, which have been my ruin." These words echo from a printed confession she gave the authorities, a blend of honesty and calculated repentance. As she speaks, tears slip down her cheeks. Not far away, a woman in the crowd clutches her bonnet, the very bonnet Rachel was accused of trying to steal when she was caught. Their eyes meet for a fleeting second. Rachel's lips tremble in something like an apology, and the woman nods, eyes downcast. The executioner gently places a linen hood over Rachel's head, plunging her world into white. Her breath is loud in her ears. Courage finds her in the darkness. In her mind's eye, she imagines the rolling waves of the Isles of Shoals, her husband laughing, the wild freedom she tasted if only briefly. At least, she thinks, I lived free however short the time. The trapdoor beneath her opens with a thunk. In that final instant, Rachel Wall feels a startling peace as she steps from one world into the next, a pirate's soul released to the wind. When the sun finally breaks through the fog, it shines upon an empty scaffold and a silent crowd, left with the haunting lesson of a young woman who dared to live and die by her own choices. Time flows onward like the relentless tide, erasing footprints in the sand yet never truly washing away the impact of those who walked there. The stories of Bonny, Mary Red, Ching Shi, Grace O'Malley, Rachel Wall, and so many other female pirates might have faded to whispers, but their legacy endures in unexpected ways. On a quiet Caribbean shore, a weathered wooden marker stands over an unmarked grave where Mary Red rests, a testament to a courageous soul who escaped the hangman only to be claimed by fever. In a South Carolina churchyard, an old woman known as Anne Fulford was long rumored to have been the infamous Anne Bonny who lived to old age in obscurity. If true, one can imagine her in later years, knitting by the fire as grandchildren play at her feet, never suspecting that grandma once dueled Navy sailors and spat defiance at the scaffold. Across the world in Guangdong, China, the tomb of Ching Shi bears a simple inscription. Locals may walk past, unaware that beneath lies history's most successful pirate, a woman who ended her days a wealthy proprietor instead of a corpse on the execution docks. Her unlikely bargain with the Qing government stands as a masterstroke of cunning over brutality. How many warlords or male pirates can claim such an outcome? Precious few. On the Irish coast, the ruins of Grace O'Malley's castle at Clare Island overlook the churning Atlantic. Villagers tell tales of Granuaile to this day, how she met the English queen as equal, how she died an old lady in her bed in 1603, her life story nearly lost to official history. In their lore, she remains the pirate queen who defended the Irish spirit against all odds. These women lived in eras that betrayed them at every turn, societies that proclaimed women must be meek, silent, and obedient. Instead, they chose the roaring symphony of freedom with all its danger and drama. Their fates after capture were as varied as their lives. Some manipulated the prejudices of the age to earn a stay of execution, a baby in the womb proving a better shield than any cutlass for Anne and Mary. Others used sheer wit and diplomacy, turning enemies into benefactors, Grace's silver tongue and Ching Shi's deal-making. Some, like Rachel, met the same grim end as countless male pirates, swinging by the neck, yet even she twisted her narrative in the final hour, claiming the gallows as a pirate's gallows on her own terms. In these outcomes lies a dramatic irony. What was often intended as subjugation became, in their hands, an assertion of agency. The authorities expected broken, penitent women. Instead they encountered lionesses in chains, unbowed. In the stillness of a modern archive or library, one might stumble upon their trial transcripts, letters, or confessions. Faded ink on yellowed parchment, these records speak of notorious viragos and wicked maids. But read closer and you find something else. Evidence of resilience and audacity that transcends time. Anne Bonny's infamy ensured her name lives on in ballads and books. Mary Read's bravery on the battlefield is recalled whenever tales of women warriors are told. Ching Shi's tactics are studied by naval historians, her legend fueling films and imagination. Grace O'Malley's life has been reclaimed by scholars and folk songs, inspiring those who fight for women's recognition in history. Even Rachel Wall, largely forgotten, has become a cautionary tale of a life cut short by want of guidance and opportunity, a poignant footnote in America's story. As our journey ends, picture the moonlit sea one last time. In the mind's eye, ghostly ships sail across the waves. At their helms stand the spirits of these pirate women, guiding their vessels through the night. They nod to one another in camaraderie across time and tide. Betrayal, courage, imprisonment, legacy, and the bitter reality of gender inequality, they bore those weights as bravely as any man and often paid a steeper price. Yet, in defying the norms, they carved out their own destinies with cutlass and cannon, wit and will. Their stories, once suppressed or forgotten, now rise from the depths to remind us that freedom has always been a treasure worth fighting for. And though their voices were nearly lost to the gales of history, if you listen closely, you can still hear them, whispering in the language of the sea, urging us to remember.